just want to keep things as organized as possible here. Keep random tidbits that I'm going to sell in that pocket. There we go. Moving forward to the next, the shelving and everything else that had initially caught his eye. More and more of these scrolls. Olaf certainly was a bit more than a standard priest to have all these at his disposal so nearby. Books, scrolls, more and more, as well as several divine spells that would help enhance defense and heal. Definitely useful. A scroll that would greatly assist him in the battle against the Intellect Devourer. He would have to recall that he had that on him. Assuming he ever found the beast. Neverwinter was divided into 4 districts, and though he had found the 4 maps in the academy, it didn't make them any smaller, it just meant that he didn't have to explore them as closely. It was a big city, and he was going to have to explore it all if he wanted to have any hope of locating the creatures. Luck only went so far. Another spell that would be highly useful. The Clarity spell. Having successfully finished off gathering the supplies for his journey, Angelo moved forward, making a mental note to keep that note from Ophala in mind. After all, he was not really above blackmailing a high priest that had been partaking of the local women that Ophala had under her keep. Now that he had explored everything he recalled, he did wish to talk to the nurse before anything else. Stepping forward and carefully avoiding the poor soul that she was working with, he was curious if there was anything that she could provide him with as far as information went. Little servants and nurses working along in the shadows tended to hear things that other people did not. I really should be tending to the sick, but I can spare a few moments, sir. Rumors, yeah. I've heard my share. Destler and Erebeth are always arguing, and Fenthic's always trying to keep the peace. None of them pay any attention to a quiet little nurse calling about her duties, so I've heard all sorts of stuff about each and every one of them. Starting with Destler, the grumpy old man. Erebeth doesn't like him. I know that much. He's got a sharp tongue and a sour face, but I think it's more than that. But it's really not my place to speak on such things. Angelo, carefully leaning forward, a sly smile decorating his features. Come now, telling me won't do any harm. With a flustered response, Destler and his Hellmites showed up soon after the plague started, just in time to get locked inside the city when the quarantine hit. Destler says they came because they heard about Neverwinter's suffering, but it seems like odd timing to Lady Erebeth, or so she told Fenthic once. Are you interested in more of my gossip, my lord? This quaint little smile caused Angelo to smirk. He'd have her hooked now. Lady Erebeth's always telling Fenthic not to put so much faith in Destler and his Hellmites. You know they're lovers. Fenthic and Erebeth, I mean. Of course you know. Everybody knows. Nothing he hadn't known, but the tidbit regarding Destler and Erebeth was still useful. Poor Fenthic. He's caught in the middle between Destler and Erebeth. Always ends up having to pick one side or the other when they argue about how to save the city. You'd think he'd always side with the Erebeth since they're lovers, but Fenthic's an honest man, and when Erebeth is wrong, he's not afraid to tell her so. Yeah, none of this matters, so a quaint goodbye and a promise of a couple coins in her purse anytime she hears anything else regarding the trio that he was currently working with. On your way, then. I've got too many sick and suffering to waste my time on long goodbyes. With a slight smile despite her sassy reply, she would go back to her work, and Angelo would move forward. So, as it had appeared, the little trio of divinity were not quite getting along so well. Desther and Fenthig appeared to be good friends, or at least good business partners, but Erebeth clearly had a disdain for the Helmite. This was something he could possibly abuse in later time. As he moved forward, a little hen, clearly a rogue by his dress, would call out to him. The confusion caused him to glance down and focus. By his dress he was most certainly a rogue. Leathers and a short, heavy blade made it clear. It was no surprise. Hen were often quite talented at finding things that the larger folk were not capable of. And though Angelo could appreciate the natural skill at such that many of the little folk had, Angelo had that expertise covered. Waving the hen's calls off, politely but firmly, he would make his way towards the temple exits. Only a few steps forward, and a young woman was rushing toward him. Well, it certainly wasn't the first time a young woman had thrown herself at him, but judging from her expression, she was in no mood for the fun that came to mind. Thankfully, after a bit of patience, the young woman had seemed to calm down, stepping forward to help ease her as his hand raised. "Oh, please, can you help me? You're with the city militia, aren't you? The guards at the gate said I might get help over here, but I don't know if they were serious or not." Angelo easing her. There was no point in calling her a woman and asking why she was bothering him of all things. "Thank you. I don't mean to take you away from your duties. I mean, you're a guard, right? Probably got your hands full, but this is important. It's the Peninsula District. I live there, and oh, it's just horrible. The killing, everyone running for their lives. It's horrible." Angelo certainly isn't technically a guard, but he is serving with the militia, so he'll roll with it for now. He'll allow her to assume, and not bother to correct her, that it wasn't technically a lie after all. Telling her to calm down and take it easy, and explain when she was ready. After a few breaths, she had relaxed enough to actually communicate in normal, civilized manner. Okay. I came from the Peninsula District. That's where my home was. Now it's too dangerous to go there. The prisoners are killing everyone. It's awful." He wouldn't ask a poor peasant girl for price. He would go to the militia for that. A smart man knows who to do business with. No, she might offer him some other thanks afterward, but that was for later thought. "Well, it's kind of complicated. The Peninsula District houses the Neverwinter Prison. The families of the guards and such live around it. It's been safe for years. It changed a little while ago. The guards never came home from work one day. And now, the prisoners are everywhere. First the plague, now the threat of a knife in your belly." Yeah, he'll see what he can do. You stay here where it's safe. "Thank you. I can't say how much this means to me. Do you need directions? I'll tell you, just to be sure. The Peninsula District is through the gate on the southwest side of the city core, near the Moonstone Mask. There are guards posted there, but I'm sure they'll let you through." Thankfully, it seemed she'd calmed down a bit and knew she was safe here, if nothing else. The Peninsula District, He had intended to go to the Beggar's Nest in search of his equipment. However, as well, he had heard rumors of the undead walking around. It was not exactly the most enjoyable thought. As large a threat as a prison break was, no district had it easy except for the Black Lake districts. But undead spreading was the greatest danger to have in the city. Perhaps the plague had even evolved into a new stage, raising the corpses that it made. The plague had, after all, originated in the beggar's nest. For now, he needed to sell his new goods and his generous donations from Olaf to the trade of blades. As much as the Peninsula District likely needed his help, everyone needed his help, and he was only being paid so much. He couldn't be everywhere at once. The beggar's nest would take priority. Cutting down the zombies would most certainly help. Undead was not something that he needed. As he traveled through the city heading towards the trade of blades, he would hear several conversations, along with the groans of the dead. And not the groans of the dead, the groans of the dying, and the bodies of the dead. People had lost daughters, they'd lost children and parents. The city was a mess. As he entered the building, the sound of drunken chants filled the air. Pushing inside, he was greeted by exactly what he had come to expect at this point. Mercenaries, drunks, rogues, and even merchants. But the only in particular was who he was his immediate goal. He could talk to the others once he'd made his purchases, if the man had anything worthwhile, but primarily sold the items that he'd obtained. Erebeth had offered, but he felt like selling things he'd taken from the temple to the temple was asking for trouble.
Hello there.
Step right up. I've got just what you're looking for. My shop ain't what it used to be, but it's still a shopkeeper nonetheless. Angelo, of course, agreeing. He'd had business with this man once already. He'd be the one to buy the books and the armor, if he could recall. And, as he'd expected, he was willing to purchase them now for 2 gold apiece. Though it wasn't much, it did give him a little bit, and it was certainly worthwhile. The wine, selling for 14 for all 10 bottles, was much more decent. And finally, Angelo carefully brought out the well-aged many-cherry wine. He saw the merchant's eyes widen. After all, finding something like that here in the first place was rare. Finding it during a plague, even more so. Initially expressing concern on who exactly he would sell it to, Angelo commented on the Black Lake district. After all, they were mostly unaffected by the plague. This caused the merchant to hesitate before slowly agreeing. Though he couldn't buy it at full price, normally this bottle would go for 3 platinum coins. A bit of trade back and forth, and finally Angelo managed to get 2 platinum coins as well as 16 gold pieces out of it. Quite the little haul. He nearly had 800 platinum coins at this point. He'd also become very well stocked on his potions thanks to the generous donations of his employer. Satisfied with this, he would then browse through whatever items the man in question had to offer him. Helmets were of no use to him. He preferred the vision that having his head free offered him. However, a magic cloak that offered some enhanced protection was likely useful. He didn't have any enchanted weaponry, as one would expect, and he had a decent selection of potions, but nothing he felt he needed to have at this moment. An enchanted amulet to help increase his protection as well, and a few enchanted rings, but nothing better than what he already had. For now, he would make a mental note of the magic bags. In fact, one truly caught his eye. Finding one that potent was quite rare. However, it would cost him almost 200 platinum coins. Over, in fact, after a little bit of arguing. Still, it would greatly enhance how much he could carry. It would make selling it later that much easier. He should be able to make back the money. And of course, eventually he most definitely could. After a brief sigh and a bit more arguing, he managed to whittle him down to 2,349 gold. He'd wanted 50, but Angelo had managed to whittle down that one extra gold. A purchase that was a bit risky as one of his first, but something he felt certain would pay off. Satisfied with this for now, he would close out. The man had gotten over 2,000 gold pieces. He was satisfied enough. And now, Angelo was free to glance around. He had choices. There were several merchants here, but that wasn't what he wanted. Instead, what he was after were mercenaries. If you enjoy my videos and don't want to miss out on future content, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification button. If you would like to support what I do on a more personal level, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.